Futurise has been looking into this, especially in recent times, with a lot of chatter out there about micromobility. And it is something that I guess it is not just in Malaysia. It is also an issue, I believe, happening in other parts of the world as well, with the proliferation of micromobility and new ways of finding the solution to the last mile. And I guess in Malaysia, especially with issues of public transport, about urban mobility, this is not new. But we look positively towards micromobility as providing perhaps a solution to what is a perennial problem. So again, we are looking forward to a lively, robust discussion. We hope to also understand and possibly navigate this gray area of micromobility. To be honest, I'm not too sure either how you define micromobility. I understand there are several definitions, but maybe even that basic matter can be discussed here. I hope so, and maybe we can also understand what are the other parameters to this topic. Without further ado, I'll pass on to Mr. Karamjit, and thank you very much for attending.
Thank you, sir. Okay, the key word is we want to have a frank discussion, okay? So we're keeping your questions actually for the last 30 minutes, but honestly, if you have something that is really itching at you and you say, I want to get the question off now, because sometimes you forget a question. And if there is a question you want to ask that is very urgent, just put up your hand, okay, and get my attention, and we'll let you ask your question right away to them, right? Otherwise, we'll keep the question till the end. So we're going to start now with a bunch of questions. So they've been given the questions already, and they're not on the here, but I'll be asking them the questions, and then at the end you'll get your questions, okay, to the panel. So the tougher the question, the better. And I may even then hire you for DNA if you ask a really solid question. Okay, then with that, sorry, I think you know who the panelists are, and I don't want to waste time reading through their biodata, and we're going to just get started. Look, so this is the primary motive of the ban, obviously is because about safety, right? Rider safety and pedestrian safety and other road user safety. So if that, and there's been a lot of articles about that also. So my question is that I want to ask them, and hopefully from a data point, can each of you share, right? How many incidents have happened since you started operating in Malaysia? And what has been the extent of the harm to road users also? So we'll start this way, and then I will come back down this, right? So Timothy, you can take this, and you get to share the mic with Humayun. Yep, Humayun. Sorry, I think no. Taty gets to use the mic on her own as the lady. Yes. Oh, open. Right underneath there. Underneath. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, but we're in the sharing business. We love to share.
Oh, they love to share. There you go, man. Touche. Okay.
Okay. Firstly, thank you very much to Futurise and Cyberview for organizing this on such a quick note. I think this is extremely important, especially given the recent ban from.
Okay, you can look at the audience. Don't have to look at me. Yeah.
Okay. But who's asking the question? Okay. And thank you again, Karamjit, for taking interest in this topic. Yeah. So I think just to answer your question, I think usually it's easy, or it's helpful to add some context, right, to a question. And before I start to answer your question, I think it's worth noting that from research, right, done by Miros, every year we have 1% of all owners of motorbikes meet into accidents. So that's about 140,000 accidents every year on motorbikes. And from that, 10% of those accidents result in death. So if you take the percentages, it comes up to about 0.1% of motorcycle trips have deaths. Now, you compare that against, I can't speak for all of us, but for us, TRYKE, for example, in the 3 years that we've operated, we've seen a less than 0.05%, right, of incidences with 0% deaths. So what does that say, right? And that's just to add some context. Yes, it is a sensitive topic now because of some other things that are happening outside of micromobility, right? With the recent news around the cycling in Johor, I think that all adds to the sensitivity of the issue. So while I appreciate that we're now focusing, on micromobility, and I think regulation is always good, especially when it comes down to safety, I strongly believe that a ban is not the right answer, right? I think now that we know this is an issue, let's start to put in place things that we can do to move in the right direction.
So that's incredible. So the data point is less than 0. so half a 0 point is like 0.5%, right? Okay.
Less than 0.05%.
Oh, 0.05. That's, oh my goodness, man. Okay.
Yeah, and we've
Fantastic.
given
That's
hundreds of
pretty insane.
thousands of trips. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. On your website, if you go to his website now, you can see the clock ticking, the meter clicking, right? It stops at like 100,000 rides, right? And what? How many 100,000 kilometers?
So that's actually old.
Oh, that's all, huh?
That's
Okay.
all.
Okay,
So
man.
even more than
Webmaster, update the website, please. Okay, go ahead. So, what is the latest one then? Since it's on the website, do you know what is the latest data on your website then? That you have?
For the number of trips?
Yeah.
I can't give you
Oh,
the exact number of trips, but it's more than 100,000.
More 100,000, huh?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, sorry. All right, Humayun, would you like to take the question and share some data points with us from a data point of view?
Thanks to Futurise for organizing this. So to answer Karamjit's question, we have not been in operations for as long as TRYKE and Beam. We properly launched at the end of last year, so we only have data for around 5 months. Out of that, 1 month was banned. So we have reported 5 accidents, which were reported by the customers, and another one which we investigated with damaged scooters, another 3. And none of them were serious. Out of those 5, 3 were drunk riders, which they admitted that we were drunk and it's our fault. They just wanted to let us know. So in 5 months of operations, we have just 5 accidents, and luckily none of them are serious. And for our users, I'm sure TRYKE and Beam also, they're doing the same. We have PA insurance for our riders. For us, it's optional for now, but by the end of the year, we'll make it permanent, included in every ride. So that's a little something which we are doing from our part, all the operators, in case there's an accident or death. So they are covered. I think even ride-hailing, e-hailing, they're not doing that either. So that's something we are doing from our end on the safety point of view. We did provide helmets in the beginning when we did the soft launch, but after the first trip, they were never returned. So yeah, but again, then the COVID hit, and of course it's with for hygienic reasons, it cannot be that one helmet is used by several people. And the other thing what we are doing before the riders initiate their ride, all the safety precautions are there. They have to swipe through it in order to start the ride. And we'll keep on increasing this the safety feature to let more and more riders know that you have to be safe while you're on the road. Please don't be drunk. Keep your hands on the handle. Don't let your kids ride in front of you, which we have seen a little bit. I've personally told a few parents, please don't do that. It's for your safety and for your kids' safety, and thankfully they listened. So yeah, that's our data. Just less than 10 accidents and none serious.
Okay, very good, interesting. So, Taty, would you like to take this also now for Malaysia?
Thank you. Thank you, Karam. Assalamualaikum to the floor, and thank you for having me here. So before I address your question, Karam, on the number of incidents or accidents that have been recorded on Beam, I think I'll share a little bit of Beam's scale, not only in Malaysia, but in the Asia Pacific. Beam is currently the largest shared micromobility operator in the Asia Pacific, and currently operating in 5 countries with a total of 35 cities, and therefore 35 different councils, different regulatory landscapes and rules, things like that. I think we're able to achieve what we have since our inception in 2018 because we have a very focused goal on providing the safest first and last mile ride for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, it doesn't matter if you're employed or you're a student, if you're old age or a young folk going around in a city. A lot of the cities that we work with realize that they've got an ongoing and worsening congestion issue. that's making it expensive and in some places inaccessible to move around conveniently and affordably from point A to point B, whether that be from your home to the public transport network, from your university to your dorm, or from your office to wherever you need to go, the bank, and so on. And I think that's what injected and propelled micromobility as an industry in everywhere that it is available. Now, to answer your question, Karam, and not to lengthen it, for Malaysia, Beam is the largest player currently for shared micromobility services. And micromobility is any mode of transport or alternate mode of transport that allows you to travel short distance rides, yeah? That's where the micro comes from. So we have a user base of 400,000 in Malaysia, and it's a mix of residents of the country as well as tourists who come and inject into our local economy, which is very important since the pandemic for the last couple of years. Our statistic is a little bit more positive than TRYKE's, but the overall message we're trying to convey that we are the safest mode of transport currently. At Beam, we have about 7 accidents per 100,000 rides. If you want to put that into a statistic, it's 0.0007%, just for Malaysia. And of course, we keep the same track record in all of the countries and cities that we operate in because we focus on safety.
Sure.
So Tim mentioned some accident statistics for cars, for motorcycles, fatality statistics. Beam has never had any of our riders reach fatality while riding off our Beam scooters. So to answer your question, Karam, that's the statistic for Beam.
Okay. So I'm like, so where is it's so interesting that minuscule safety issues your users have faced, and yet the government has cited that safety is an issue. So clearly there's a lot of room for also, I think the three of you are right, as a collective right body to share this with them, right, and to re-emphasize, right, what the real numbers are. So that's a great avenue for moving forward already right there. Because honestly, so I didn't know what they're going to share. I wanted to just be spontaneous in assessing it. But that's why I used the word minuscule, which is a hard word for me to pronounce. It's tiny, man. So it's amazing. So you guys got a lot to do, okay, to reassure the government that, hey, whatever data you have, this is what's going on a daily basis. And I'm sure you can share the data with them also, right? And you're not going to manipulate it. So that's good. So let's move forward then with that. My second question, and maybe Taty, we'll start with you first, Taty, which is like, so what has been, when you have an accident then and you're obviously trying to reach as close as possible to zero, after these incidents have happened, what has been the remedial action that your organization has taken? And the two of you answer that also as you come down the road. All right.
Thank you, Karam. I think before we get into what happens when a rider gets into an accident, I think I'd like to share that Beam, with its focus on safety, first takes a preventative approach to how we operate, the technology that goes into it, and the hardware that we use for all our scooters. And this is going to be a mix of hardware, a mix of software, and advocacy. At Beam, as far as hardware is concerned, we use what's best in the micromobility industry. In fact, all our scooters are aircraft-grade aluminum. This prevents any ability of dent, crack, rust, and breakage when an accident happens, or because of our weather, the overall wear and tear. We already make our scooters that way. We are, our fireproofing standards of our scooters are of international standards. So is our waterproofing standards.
Waterproofing also.
Waterproofing. Because, you know, we've got, it's a micro vehicle, but it's a very smart one. It's integrated to our app. It's integrated to GPS systems and other geo-positioning systems. It communicates to us a health of a scooter, so we know before a rider goes on it if there are any issues with the scooter, whether the lights are not as bright or the blinkers are not blinking, the brakes are not as good, or the battery is not at optimum levels. And we take the preventative approach of stopping a rider, making a scooter not available to be ridden, should any of those aspects come up in our system. So we first take a preventative approach. But of course, you know, human nature, we put all the steps in, but the tendency to have an accident is still there, even though it is minuscule, as you say. So what do? There's two ways where BEAM knows there is an accident. Number one is direct from the user. Of course, the user has a QR code that can be scanned on our scooter, the help desk line that is operated locally on our app, and immediately they can say, you know, I've gotten into an accident, what can I do? Our local customer support team reaches out immediately. And I can say this because I had anonymously reported an issue, and really it doesn't even take them, you know, I think you call an ambulance these days, it takes an hour, but for BEAM, it takes maybe a 15-minute response rate. Another way that we can detect if something has happened to a rider, you know, in the midst of an accident, perhaps you don't even think about the reporting part.
Sure.
As I mentioned, there are communication technologies within the scooter that is synced with our system. When in the middle of a ride, if anything happens, it is communicated to us via the scooter, not the rider. And that's why we can detect if anything has happened to our rider. And immediately, again, because of the contact details are all connected, our customer support team reaches out to them and does the necessary steps to you know, what happens after that.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Interesting. Oh, aerospace grade, your equipment, airplane, okay, but it's under the aerospace industry. Those are like absolutely world-class standards. No room for compromise at all, right? Because if you're up in a plane, you know, you don't even want to know that it's 0.0007. That's not good enough for you. You're not getting on a plane. So that's really impressive. Wow. Okay, great. That's a really high bar you guys have set. Okay, so Humayun, you want to share about the remedial actions for those, you know, tiny, one-a-month incident that you all have suffered?
So the basically every rider after the ride, they can rate the ride, and they have an option to give us feedback, and we go through each and every single feedback of how the ride was. And a lot of times riders have said the brake was loose, or it was too tight or too heavy. So what we do straight away, we put that scooter offline, and within 12 hours, that scooter is back in our warehouse to be repaired. Sometimes it happens that it was their first ride and they didn't know how to operate. So if the scooter is okay, we leave it on the ground. But if it's faulty, we bring it back to the warehouse. We haven't had that many problems yet because our fleet is fairly new. But still, the roads, some of the roads are not very smooth. So of course, there has been damages. But we rectify it within 12 hours, whatever the problem is.
Okay.
And if someone has put a feedback or contacted us, we have a WhatsApp hotline. I personally reach out to them to see if they're okay. That one rider whose kid fell while he was, so I called them and said whatever we can help, we will. And they were very thankful that at least someone called and they care about us. And as I mentioned earlier, that before the ride is started, users have to see how to ride the scooters, what to do and what not to do. And it's a learning curve. With every ride which is taken, we learn something we didn't know as compared to the previous one. So, and it's not like we think we have done everything from safety point of view. It's a learning curve, and we will keep on learning and improving our services for the customers. Our scooters are the only three-wheelers. That's the reason we went for three-wheelers, because it's more stable.
Okay.
Yeah, and users love it basically because of the stability.
Okay, so interesting. In Malaysia, you're the only three-wheeler. Are you saying even like in the region, you're the only three-wheeler then?
Yes, in the region we are the only three-wheelers. Yes.
Three-wheeler, so but not globally, right? I'm sure there's some cities or some countries where they've got three-wheelers also introduced.
Yeah,
correct?
there are some cities as well,
Okay.
but most of them are in Europe and I
Okay.
think North America.
Oh,
But
okay,
in the region, we are the only ones.
You know, they definitely look very stable and safe. But if I was a university kid from any of the universities here, I may not want to use your scooter because it looks too safe, right? You want something that gives you a bit of a thrill also, right? Young kids, right? You want that. So that may be the downside, I don't know.
So basically, we don't want users who are below 16 years old to ride our scooters, because it could be too heavy for them. And you need to know how to balance. If you know how to ride a bicycle,
Sure,
only
of
then
course.
you can ride the scooter, even if it's a three-wheeler.
Oh, really,
So this
yeah?
is something we
Wow.
have learned. You need to know how to balance.
Interesting. Okay,
Yeah, so
okay, fine, interesting. I wouldn't think balance would be an issue with something that's so stable, but since you say so, all right, that's fine.
we've had issues where users were trying to ride it. Actually, one was a friend, and he was struggling for 10 minutes. And I was like, why can't you ride it? I mean, it's not rocket science.
Correct, yeah.
And he was like, yeah, I had the same issue with when I was trying to learn the bicycle. And I was like, did you learn it? He said, no.
No.
And so I was like, okay, so that
I
answered the
understood.
question.
That's a
that-
precursor, lah. Okay,
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
All right, Tim, sorry, do you want to take this question about, what remedial action you took after those, those small incidences did happen?
Yeah, I think basically at TRYKE, we echo a lot of the things that Beam and Zeus has done.
Okay.
I think it's an industry practice to do, pre-ride education, tutorials before you start. So a lot of the things are quite similar. I think the only thing I would add is that from a hardware perspective, we spend a lot of time. We've been around for 3 years. We've gone through now 4 iterations of scooters.
Okay.
And in fact, we've gone through the model that some of our competitors use, and we decided against it because we felt what we have is top of the line in terms of safety, right? We have the biggest wheelbase, we have dual brakes, we have massive suspensions, and so I'll leave that at the hardware. So, and you can go and test it for yourself. When it comes to additional steps, I think the only thing I'll add is that we also do a lot of on-the-ground training.
Okay.
Right? Micromobility is still very new to the market in Malaysia.
Yep.
And as much as we want to educate people through the apps and through the phones and videos, the best way is to be on the ground talking to them, teaching them, offering free rides. So when people start a trip on our vehicles, we actually don't charge them for the first 5 minutes. In case you feel that you're not safe.
Okay.
You're not comfortable, you just end your trip and you can walk away.
Ah, nice.
Number one. Number two, any of the hot stations that we see that has a lot of traffic, we go out and we literally have a team on the ground almost all of the day speaking to people. Hey, is this your first time? Have you tried this before? Would you like to train? Do you need helmets? Yes, we're a technology company, but at the end of the day, people are the ones using this.
Yeah.
You need a very human solution to this.
So you need the high touch also to the high tech. Yeah. Okay, fine. All right, we'll stick with you now, still, Tim, and this is the third part of this question. So, very small levels of cases of people getting hurt, riders, and then your remedial action. Now, the key part now is that were these remedial issues, right, or actions communicated then up to the authorities, or in your case, and then for the rest of you also, right, the same question.
Yes, recently we did have an incident. It got a lot of attention around Cyberjaya. I don't think this is new to the room. It took us by surprise too because it was something that we only found out through social media.
Oh.
Right? The user did not report it to us.
I see.
Our team was even on the ground and somehow they missed it. But, can't cry over spilled milk. We found out about it over social media and immediately we kicked into action. Right? We have a forensics team that we hired. to investigate the issue.
Third party.
A third-party forensics team to hire it to investigate the issue. We pulled back the vehicle immediately and we inspected the whole thing from top to bottom without taking apart the parts, right?
Oh,
Because we just
okay.
want to see that if we did anything to the vehicle in between, we're almost at the conclusion of the report, but essentially, you know, it wasn't a hardware or service related issue. It was more of a human error.
Human error.
And all of this was communicated directly to the authorities and our stakeholders because we feel that it's important for them to know
Correct.
the progress, right? The initial response was within 24 hours, we had a full report,
Oh,
right? And then after that, now we are handling on our own because we don't feel like we need to involve the authorities at this
correct.
point.
Yeah.
Until we resolve and conclude the issue, then we will report what was the final outcome.
Okay.
But yes, we do report. I think it's very important for us to work closely with
Yep.
the city councils, right? At the end of the day, if we get the approval to operate and something happens, the people that will go to the news first will probably be the city councils, the people who approved us, who allowed us the opportunity to operate in the first
Correct,
place.
yeah.
So I think it's very important for us to have and continue to maintain that communication.
Yep.
And it's something that we'll practice moving out of Cyberjaya, hopefully.
Of course,
Because
yeah.
we've been in Cyberjaya and it's our home ground.
Understood. Okay. Humayun, what about you for those, one incident a month? Was there anything as feedback shared with the authorities?
So what we do in a case of an accident, we on a reported accident, the one we find out, we take all the data of that ride, where it was initiated, where they went exactly, which road were they on, just to be safe, and so that we know as well that if they go outside the business zone, if they were riding where they're not supposed to on a highway or in a in a no-go zone, we haven't reported to the authorities because there's no body who's controlling us for now.
Okay, understood.
If need be, of course we have all the data and we are happy to share with the authorities. Touch wood, our accidents, as I said, were just not that serious. So,
Sure.
But from our side, we kept everything. We have the data. All the scooters, Beam, TRYKE, and ours, these are there's too much technology in it. There's GPS, as Taty said. We know exactly where scooter is at any given moment. So giving data to the authorities and getting data, retrieving, it's not an issue. When there is a body, hopefully soon, we will be happy to report. But so far, no,
Okay.
nothing yet.
All right. Taty?
Yep. Thank you, Karam. So the short answer is absolutely yes. Beam, I think, aside from the very heavy focus on safety in terms of hardware and software, we are very aware of the fact that we are transporting people on our vehicles. And when it comes to people, obviously, safety is number one. So at the start of any ride, I like to share, Beam actually provides each and every rider with personal accident insurance throughout the duration of their ride. It is not an option that you need to click in order to have it.
Okay.
It's not an additional cost that they need to bear. This feature and offering that we have is embedded already within the cost, the regular cost that we charge our riders. So in terms of that, we have personal accident insurance for all our riders. Now, with reporting to the regulatory bodies, our first responsibility, of course, is to the city councils that we are in partnerships with.
Okay,
Yes.
sure.
At the end of the day, we position ourselves as a solution to the pain points of a city, whether their pain points may be first, last mile transport or connectivity. Maybe their pain point is, a very carbon congested city and so on. And we take the consultative approach always with any city councils. So aside from regular engagements that we have with them, when there is an incident, absolutely, we communicate and collaborate with them, however is best to resolve the issue. Of course, the city has a part to play in this, and as well as Beam, and we keep them informed every step of the way. Just like Tim shared, an incident report, we have that as well. And with the data that's able to be gathered, the location, the time, the rider's profile, age, gender, and also a step-by-step report of how Beam has reacted to the situation is recorded in such a report. And we maintain this transparency with all the city councils we collaborate with. Yes.
Sure. Okay. Interesting. So it just struck me. Have your customers made police reports? Have you had police reports made or no?
Yes, absolutely. As
But
part
by
of
the customer, lah, right? Because they were okay. I see. They have
correct.
Made, okay.
So the fault T is the rider, and of course, to adhere to the requirements of the insurance claim, a police report has to be made. And any other authority concerned also has to be informed. So it can be police, it can be the city council, and whatever authority is relevant to the situation.
Okay, all right. So now I'm just going to stay with you first, and because this is a question just specific for Beam, because as she already indicated, they are the largest player in Southeast Asia, in Asia Pacific. And the advantage of that is, I suspect that what is happening here, the regulatory hurdle they're facing now, would have already happened in some other city where they've operated in. So can you share experience of that and how you managed to overcome, that hurdle, which is what you guys are facing now?
Thank you, Karam. Yes, I think you put it rightly. I think what's happening in Malaysia is not new to the micromobility industry. And how we have approached each country or each city that we work with, to be honest, is a tailored approach each time. And the reason is that although, at national, federal level, there may be laws and regulations in place, when it comes to city level implementations, there are going to be different aspects in play. There's going to be different types of infrastructure available. There's going to be different issues that a city council has engaged Beam to solve, whether it's a carbon issue, whether it's a connectivity issue. And I think we remain in partnership with 35 cities at current, and we're growing because we take this approach. Every approach is a tailored approach. And we believe that the industry as well as the government can come together to have an agreeable consensus to how the way forward. In Malaysia, when the ban first happened, we know that it was stemming from an incident in Johor, from young riders who have their own vehicles.
Okay.
And could make such modifications to vehicles as how they choose. Now, shared micromobility vehicles take a different approach for cities when we come in as a solutions provider. Our hardware and tech allow as much control over a vehicle as possible. Beam, of course, uses what's the best class in the industry. I mentioned the hardware earlier, but our tech currently is the best in terms of geo-fencing, is what we call it, where we can control geographically where a scooter can go. So the Johor incident happened on a highway. I can tell you right now that the Beam technology can be as accurate as not allowing the very specific roads not to be allowed to enter with a Beam scooter.
Wow. So wait a minute. It doesn't stop right away, right? If it realizes it, then the brake slowly comes on and
yes,
it comes
absolutely,
to stop, right?
you're
Not
absolutely right.
The driver will flip over, right? The rider.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's in terms of our tech.
Okay.
So aside from geofencing, we do have, some riders who like to push the boundaries.
Yeah, of course.
And we have the capabilities to slow down a scooter to a halt and not allow the scooter to be activated again.
Oh, wow. So strict.
Unless, yes. This is also part of our safety focus.
Okay.
So we have our on-the-ground marshals, as we call them, who go out and retrieve the scooters back into the operating area. Now, in terms of speed as well, again, preventative measures from Beam. The current maximum speed for micromobility vehicles is 25 kilometers per hour. And we have the technology to put those speed limits to a scooter, meaning a scooter can't go beyond 25 kilometers per hour.
Okay.
In fact, in certain cities where, you know, it's an interest of them to have it in more pedestrian congested areas, they've asked for a slower speed.
Oh, okay.
And we're able to
And
do
accommodate
that
them.
as
Okay.
well, absolutely.
This is in Malaysia you're talking about or elsewhere? So
Elsewhere, but it's
Okay.
currently being implemented with the
Oh,
city
okay.
councils we're in partnership with in Malaysia.
Understood.
So 25 max can go down to however speed that a city council requires and what they deem is a safe speed.
Yep.
Now, this sort of technology isn't even available in the cars that you see on the road.
Yeah,
you know,
of
you've
course.
got the signboard that says
Yep.
90 km per hour, but cars are going
Yeah.
at speeds that are
Everybody thinks they're Karamjit Singh, the rally driver, not the journalist. Huh?
Yes, so even with road vehicles, again, I think that attests to the statistics that Tim shared earlier. This is why we have so many fatalities and accidents, because regular road vehicles, private vehicle owners, it is on their onus
Yeah,
to follow
correct.
the rules. Whereas if you or a city council engages a shared micromobility provider, we have the capabilities to put these limitations on a scooter to prevent a user from, number
Sure.
one, using it in areas that are very dangerous for
Yep.
them, like highways. And number two, going at speeds that are simply too fast and encourage even, you know, worse behavior like group
Yeah.
racing and
Correct.
such as that. Yeah.
Okay.
And how do we overcome the regulatory space? We do it in a consultative manner. Being in Malaysia, being, you know, the largest player, not only Southeast Asia, but Asia Pacific, we have a lot of experience to share with regulators, policymakers, and we do that ongoingly in Malaysia. And hopefully we'll come out of it with a positive
Yeah.
step
Exactly.
for both government and the people.
And
My-
the players. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Humayun, do you want to just let me now go to a question of, because she already spoke, Taty, about like engaging also, right? Clearly, engagement is the only way, the best way to go forward. How do the three of you hope to get the government to change its stance on the ban?
Talk to us, basically.
So they're not talking to you yet, huh? Okay. But I think also somebody said that the government wants to meet their players as a collective group, not an individual basis, right? So and I can see their point of view. So, but because the three of you are here, please tell us that you've already been meeting before this, right? And you're saying, hey guys, we got to put together an association or do something, right, to go and see them. And we're trying to get appointments with them, right?
To be honest, we've been talking a lot. This is the first time I met.
First time
Tim?
physically,
Yeah.
okay.
But I've met Dave from Beam quite a few times.
Okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here today,
Ah.
and we always share our views.
Okay.
But I think it's about time we get together and make some sort of micromobility operator association to be, and then. As I said earlier, we have the data the ministries need. All we have to do is just sit in a room and
Yeah.
provide that and help them explain things, how it's working next door, you know, or how it's working in Europe. It's not rocket science.
Yep,
If
yep.
they have implemented it, we can surely implement it. The infrastructure allows it. Cyberjaya is one of the good examples,
Yep.
even KL. As I said, you know, just talk to us. We are here, and whatever they need from us, we are
Ready too. Okay.
Exactly.
Fine. Tim, you want to just talk about this now, just quickly, because it feels like you haven't done it, and from me, it feels like something that you should have done already right away, or there should be a table there with a signing ceremony and you immediately form an association, right? And it's happening here and today after this.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think the ban came quite recently, so we're still trying to scramble to figure out what to do individually, and then of course now we're talking together, so across the industry. And I think this is a good first step, right? Having all three of us under the same
Yep,
roof
yeah.
and answering these types of questions. So hopefully, coming out of this, something as you suggested can come to fruition. And I think also, help from Cyberview and Futurise to organize these kinds of things
Yep.
and bring us together in as an industry and not as individual players. Like you said, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think, now is the best time for us to step forward,
Correct.
share the data, share the experience that we've already been gaining, because we've been here, we've been around.
Yeah,
It's not like we
exactly.
were hiding under a rock.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just that nobody came to speak to us, and now,
Yeah.
now that they focused on the topic,
Yeah.
let's start the
Get
conversation.
started, right? So let us give you a deadline, right? Hopefully by the 15th of this month, the three of you have come together and already forming a pro-time industry association, right? And sending out a press release say we're ready to engage with it, and DNA will definitely carry a press release, okay? On the 16th of June. So you got a very short time to do, but right now there's only three of you all, right? So you can get it done fast, all right? Just as fast as Futurise put together this panel session. So let's you meet that deadline, okay? All right, so now let's move on to actually, in a way, in a positive way, this is not a total ban, because when I first read the news, and maybe some of you, when you first read the news also, you may have thought it was a total ban, but it's not, right? Because they are talking about, right, it's a ban where you cannot be used on roads where there are other vehicle forms also. And also they said that, hey, if there are local councils which are able to work with you, right, to provide the right environment, the right facilities for you to operate, then you guys can operate. So that gives you a lot of leeway to work with respective local councils. So tell me that with that in the background, and I've actually put you guys like in the spot, because the home ground of Cyberjaya and Cyberview, the local authority, is Sepang, right? So and that's the low-hanging fruit, I guess. So have you, what has been going on with you in terms of working with the Sepang Council, right? In creating the support needed for micromobility, right, to be reintroduced here as probably the first step? Because I'm assuming that this ground zero and this is the low-hanging fruit. So Taty, can you take that question first?
Sure. I think if we want to zoom in on Sepang, absolutely Beam has been engaging with them throughout the process.
Okay.
And this engagement did not stop with the ban. Just as you mentioned, it's not a total ban. And different announcements have been coming out from the Ministry of Transport and its regulatory agencies. Our City Council partners also look to Beam to collaboratively figure out a way forward.
Okay.
So with MP Sepang's conversations have not stopped or slowed down. In fact, we've progressed. The last time I spoke to them was just the week before on a way forward. The wheels are turning. Of course, it's going to take some time. We know that putting out new city-level guidelines or things is not meant to be a one-way process. With any good public policy, public consultation, industry consultation, as well as lawful consultation with the regulators are needed. But trust that the process is ongoing. The wheels are turning, which indicates a positive perspective on micromobility for Cyberjaya. And we'll see what comes down the line. We are just very happy that all the parties involved still want to speak.
Excellent.
And still want to talk about micromobility.
I was afraid that they would say, no, you go and see MOT, get the ban overturned, then we give you a meeting. So it's good that they are engaging with you. So that's really positive. That's great. Okay.
Yeah, Karam. I think also in the brief of your question, you mentioned it's not a total ban, and we have seen the Ministry of Transport and its agencies come up with announcements almost, I think, every week since the initial announcement saying, these are the exceptions or these is not included and things like that. And I think it's an I think it's an indication that you know, the process of public policy making should be holistic and consultative.
Yep.
I'm sure the ban announcement was a reaction to the Johor incident, which is not all bad.
Yep.
Any step towards upholding the safety of the people is a positive step.
Yep.
And I think the different announcements and reactions show that there is space for more work towards it. Maybe a bit more transparency with the industry players, perhaps a more data-driven
Yep.
approach to legislation and public policy. And Beam, as well as all the players on this stage, have repeatedly mentioned, you know, we are an open book.
Yep.
If data is required, we are able to provide it.
Provide it
Yep.
instantly. Okay, man, great. Not 30 working days, right? As somebody has experienced 30 working days. That's 45 days, man. Okay. All right, Humayun, do you want to take this?
As you said, it's not a total ban, but unfortunately, when it was announced, it was portrayed as
Perceived, oh.
the headlines were e-scooters banned on Malaysian roads. So the users got scared. What we found out, a lot of our users, they thought if they ride on the road, they can get fined or jailed, or so we had to explain that you can still, please don't go on the road, which we never told them
Yep.
to go anyways. Since the beginning, bicycle lanes are there, sidewalks are there, you can ride them, but the way it was portrayed, it gave a lot of bad, negative light to micromobility.
Yeah.
So, and since we were very new, we were still in talks with a few city councils in Klang Valley. So we had applied for to operate in Cyberjaya as well, and Sepang City Council then informed us that under considering the ban from MOT, they are putting our application on hold.
On hold.
And just coincidentally, the day the ban was announced, we had a meeting with the Shah Alam City Council the next day,
Okay.
and they were also pretty shocked at the announcement, and they are all for it. Beam is already operating in Shah Alam,
Yep, correct.
and they're very supportive. And they also had to put our application on hold,
On hold.
because they said we have to clear things with MOT
Correct.
as well. So yeah.
Okay, that's fine. You want to take this quickly, Timothy? Then we'll move on to the second set of questions we have, which are just 3 questions, and then we'll open up to the floor.
Sure. Just to
Just
make
in terms
sure-
of the engagement with the Sepang municipal, because that's the low-hanging fruit, right? And it's the city where Cyberjaya is, right? Malaysia's smart city. So how have you already been trying to engage with them to create the support structure needed, right, for you guys to operate? Because the government did give the green light, right, to local authorities, providing, right, the hygiene factors have been ticked or whatever, right, and it's safe.
Yeah. So thank you for the question and for repeating. So
Yep.
I think I might be a bit biased, but Sepang is our home.
Your home, your
our
kampung.
home
Yeah,
ground. So
correct.
we've been here for a couple of years, and from day one, we always operated based on the approvals that we get from the city council and the landowners, right?
Yep.
We don't go anywhere we don't have permission or we're not wanted. That's the key thing. So I might be a bit biased. I think we don't have any issues or any more, I would say, anything else we could ask for from Sepang. But looking outside to the city councils around us, right, or across Malaysia, I think they could maybe perhaps practice a little bit of what we were able to experience here in Sepang and through Cyberview and Futurise, which is to conduct and be a bit more progressive and open in terms of allowing new technologies to operate within a controlled space before you decide or make a final decision, right?
Yeah.
So I think, and maybe it's within the DNA of Sepang and Cyberjaya, that's why we've been able to be a bit lucky
Understood.
here. But it's not, we don't see the same thing abroad.
Abroad, yeah.
Meaning to say, when we look as outside.
Okay.
Shah Alam is an exception. They've
Ah.
also been really helpful,
Nice.
But again, because of this ban, because of what MOT has just released,
Yep.
people are a bit more conservative,
it's,
safe, trying to play on the safe side. So the willingness is there, But I think from the city council level, everybody's still quite unsure
Yeah.
what does this regulation mean for them. And so everybody's playing the wait and see game,
Okay.
which is not their fault, right? So
Yeah,
now
yeah,
we just need a
correct,
bit more
correct.
clarity from the federal
Yep,
level,
yeah.
hopefully to convince them, through initiatives like this, and then trickle down to
Trickle
the city
down lah,
councils.
okay.
Yep.
But I think actually from what Taty is saying, at least Sepang Municipal Council is already engaging now also still. So, although they know there's a ban, but they're already engaging. So that's a really positive sign. And I would expect them to lead the way, right, in the whole country. Being in the heart of, the area where the most risk takers and entrepreneurs are in Malaysia, in the tech space. Okay, now let me just go on to the second set of questions, and I'll start with you. And this is a simple one, right? How is the ban hurting your organization, TRYKE?
Yeah, so thank you again for the question. The most obvious effect is, I think, it hurts business, right? That's clear and cut. But I think the other thing where it gives us this level of anxiety that prevents us from wanting to grow. I don't disagree. I think Beam is the largest player in the country.
Yeah.
We want to be the largest player in the country. It's not
Excellent,
that we
man.
don't want to.
Competition, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's right there. We can go for it. But it comes down to the city councils. Because again, we operate based on approvals that
Correct.
we receive. So yes, we can scale up to 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 fleet size. But if we don't have the necessary approvals and the right of way,
Yep.
it's a short-term gain, which we don't believe in. So twofold, right? Number one, it hurts business. Number two, it hurts our potential and our willingness to grow. So-
Okay. Humayun, what about for you? For your company, OoGyaa, right? Am I pronouncing right? OoGyaa Mobility?
Yes.
What does OoGyaa mean, just for the benefit of everyone?
So it's a slang in Urdu language. It's something. It just means something which goes fast. Because when we were trying to come up with the name, all the Scoot and Scootu and everything was
Correct.
.com was gone. So it all depends on what domain name is available.
Okay.
So yeah. How is it hurting us? How much time we got? No, I'm just kidding. Since we
120 seconds.
in a lot of ways. First thing, as I mentioned earlier, it's we are not getting the approvals based on the decision of MOT. So we have to wait. That is, of course, as Tim said, it's hurting the business. Means no revenue coming in, and the investors are not happy. And we even had talks of them pulling out of the market, which of course no one wants to happen.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, and the other thing, I don't know if Beam and TRYKE are facing that. Based on the same decision of MOT, we cannot bring more scooters in from China. We are not getting the approvals from MITI. They're also going back to the same ban, saying that because MOT has banned it, so we will not. We have to consult with MOT. But if you have any approvals from the city councils, then we can let you in. So it's like chicken and egg situation. So we are just going round and round in circles. And when we were informed about this by MITI, our new batch was already in production, and we had paid for it. We can't hold it. So it's so that's something we are talking to MITI very frequently to please. We even gave an undertaking to MITI saying that we will not deploy these scooters. We will leave them in the warehouse, but please don't. Please give us the approval to bring them in. Otherwise, the damage and storage costs can be phenomenal, which we want to avoid. So these are some of the issues we are facing.
Okay. Understood. So bad timing. You have a consignment of bikes sitting at Port Klang or Westport or wherever, right? And you cannot get it released because MITI is not giving you the license because they say, hey, there's this ban thing. Sort that out first. Okay, I understand.
Yes.
Taty, what about you? How is the ban hurting Beam?
Thanks, Karam. I think, the sentiment is shared amongst the industry players. So, my answer is not going to be very different from what Tim and Humayun shared. But I think I can take this opportunity to turn the question to who else does the ban hurt?
Yep, true.
Of course, as you know, us running the business, we understand internally how it affects us, but there's a larger impact at play here. At the end of the day, the people who use micromobility use them to fill a gap in their daily lives, something that happens to them every day. In Malaysia, Beam knows the majority of our riders use it as a connectivity solution.
Okay.
You know, traffic, it's not KL traffic or even traffic in the whole Klang Valley is not something that a person wants to endure. And I think now we are in the stage where most companies are asking their workers to return to the office, which has made the
Yep.
traffic situation much less desirable. And
course.
with that comes a much less desirable environmental impact to an area. So, you know, if we look at the news, of course, we're talking about bans and bans and bans. But if we look at social media, whether it be reactions of people on Twitter, Facebook, and the like, they are voicing out that their daily lives are now disrupted once again because
Okay.
this solution that was the missing piece of the connectivity puzzle here in Malaysia has now been taken away from them. So, you know, that's already a big impact.
Yep.
Another thing is operating a micromobility business is labor heavy.
Yep.
We at Beam especially we put a lot of effort in ensuring that our e-scooters are serviced well, always in tip-top condition, always available for our users, and not and nothing outside of that. And this is a very labor-intensive industry. Now, if the micromobility industry is halted, or either temporarily or for a longer period in Malaysia, I think we should have a think about what that means to local jobs. Wherever Beam operates, we immediately create new jobs for individuals who want to, be full-time with us or part of our gig economy
Okay.
program. And if we think about that, do we really want to reduce the number of employment opportunities at a time where the economy really needs to grow for Malaysia? So those are my two answers.
Okay.
Karam,
Fine.
thank you.
Interesting. Thanks. Humayun, you want to take this, and then Timothy, about who else is the ban? This ban hurting?
I answered that just now.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
but it was about just you only. But who besides you, who else is the ban hurting? So, like Taty is saying, customers and staff, right? Eventually.
Sorry, yeah.
So
Employment is one of the things. We had to let go some of our
Already, yeah?
part-timers
Oh.
because we just started
I
in end of December.
Yep.
So, and within 4 months we were hit with this ban, so the revenues dropped and we couldn't sustain them. So unfortunately, we had to let them go. But if things, and I don't want this to continue. Because
Yeah,
if
of
the
course.
revenue keeps dropping, we won't be alive anymore.
Understood.
So that's one thing, and most of our part timers, they're students, university students who make a living on the side by working in 4-6 hour shifts for battery swapping and rebalancing. So that's and that really hurts us to see, to tell someone, I'm sorry, there's no job for you. It's not a good feeling, and I'm sure they'll share my sentiment. That's
Okay, fine. Thanks. Yeah, I can feel the pain there. Timothy, for you, who else is affected besides the company itself?
Yeah, I think in addition to what Taty and Humayun has mentioned, which is obviously the immediate people within the company,
Of
right?
course,
Their livelihoods and their jobs. I think just the general ecosystem, right? The general tech ecosystem within Malaysia. If something like this happens, then what does that say about other opportunities and technologies that are trying to grow within the ecosystem? We home grew our own technology and software from the ground up. Everything is made. We don't license any software. Everything is made here in Malaysia, and bans like this will put it immediately to a halt, right? And me as a founder, what will I think of my next steps, right? Will I still want to continue to grow or try to build something that is
From here,
innovative
yeah.
or new in this country? No, I mean not to say no, but there is that anxiety and fear, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's another impact I think that would have would be sweeping across not just us, the operators, not just the cities, not just our users, but the ecosystem as a whole.
Ecosystem lah. I guess so. So this nicely dovetails to my second last question, which is this country says that Malaysia wants to be the heartbeat of digital ASEAN, right? I'm sure most of you have heard of that, right? Statement of intent, ambition that Malaysia wants to be the heartbeat of digital ASEAN. So, but when something like this happens, right? What do you think it says about such a statement like that? Makes it. I won't put words into your mouth, but
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of answered it with the
Yeah.
last question also. I think it does create the sense of anxiety and fear, and it just creates more barriers to entry. When you're coming up with something that's innovative, that might be risky, that might be new, there's always this question of, will I be regulated out of existence, right? We see this now with crypto across the world.
yeah.
Companies who initially got founded in, let's say, countries like the USA, generates multi-millions, billions, whatever, huge amounts of revenue, but because of regulation, they've been forced to move out of
Yes.
their home countries into more regulatory friendly environments. And so too with that does the jobs and the investments and everything comes along with it. So yeah, I think that would hurt Malaysia in a certain way. Of
Yeah.
course, I don't think micromobility is the size of what we say the crypto market yet today.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
No,
Of course
no.
not. But it is just one of the many examples
Sure.
of issues we may or may not face as tech founders, as as
Understood.
ecosystem players.
Humayun, as a non-Malaysian, the only non-Malaysian on the panel, when you hear that statement, right, Malaysia wants to be the heartbeat of digital ASEAN, and something like this happens, how do you think it'll affect, the ambitions behind that statement and the intent?
Yeah, as the only foreigner on the stage, I'm here because I believe in this market. I'm here because I did my research and I thought this will work here. MDEC agreed with me. That's why I'm under their MTEP program. The thing is, banning this is basically killing an industry. Which my question is why? It's something which is working all over the world. Why can't we make it work here, right? As I said, we have the data, we have everything which is required by the authorities. We are willing to share. As far as the infrastructure is concerned, Cyberjaya, I don't think they have to spend anything on it. Bicycle lanes are already there.
True.
TRYKE and Beam are already operating. Even in KL, in the city center, anywhere you go, you see those blue bike lanes. DBKL, I don't think they have to spend even a single ringgit on infrastructure. So everything is in place. I think we should just go ahead.
Just get it going, right? Okay. When Taty, you can answer this question, but after this, I'm going to open it up to the audience. If any of you have a questions, right, please, I think there will be a mic for the floor that's available, and you can answer you can get your question shared across. If there are none, then I will have one final question before we wrap up. So, Taty, for you.
Thanks, Karam. I think Malaysians are very proud of our country, and we're also very ambitious people. Hence, the goal which you shared, Karam, wanting to be the digital hub of ASEAN. I think at this stage, while the regulatory landscape for micromobility still is in a stage of consultation. I think the government really has an opportunity to put those goals to practice. I think Malaysia, is no stranger of losing credible talent
Yep.
to just across the causeway. And I don't think we want to lose that battle for the micromobility industry either. So I think I would encourage really the Malaysian government to be open to innovation, technology innovation, tech-enabled economies, tech-enabled green economies,
Green.
which are what micromobility
Yep.
industry is providing. And just be open to working together with industry players, whether local or
Oh.
from foreign waters, to make our nations and our cities better. That's all from me, Kar.
Okay, cool, great. Thanks a lot. I mean, nicely sums it up. Do we have any questions from the audience then, from the floor? If anyone has something to ask. Okay, there are two. Okay, the hand here went up first, so maybe.
Thank you. Good evening, Karam and fellow panelists. What in your mind is a sound and effective regulation to replace this ban? So we went from a place of no regulation to banning, and it was pendulum effect, which we all think it's bad. But what is a safe, sound, and effective regulation in your view that would allow you to operate? And what does that mean? Are there certain technical features of a regulation that needs to be put in place? Or is it simply city planning? And what does that look like for townships with no proper infrastructure? Not everywhere in Malaysia is like Cyberjaya, but we feel that connectivity problem exists everywhere, that first mile, last mile connectivity. So in your view, what does a good solid regulation look like in Malaysia? Thank you.
Good question. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ram, for the great question. Where do I start?
Hey, 2 minutes, man.
It's okay.
Each, yes.
Okay, so I think firstly, micromobility again is not brand new to the world, right, as a whole. Malaysia is one, I would say, of the later adopters for this technology and innovation. And so if we just look across the region, right, there are other countries already that are starting to adopt micromobility and already have regulations and micromobility rules in place. What we can do, I think, is look at what fits us the best based on our certain specific situations. Exactly like Taty mentioned, everything should be tailor-made. Not tailor-made to the country, not tailor-made to the state, but tailor-made to the cities. Every city has a different infrastructure. Every city has a different, lane, different types of town planning, right? But micromobility is adaptable. We can adapt it to, the different city architectures and the different city forms. For example, in Cyberjaya, lots of bicycle lanes. So what we can say is, allow micromobility only within dedicated bicycle lanes or sidewalks because the connectivity is there. But if you look in places like, for example, I won't give a specific name, but another city that doesn't have proper bicycle lane infrastructure, you can actually see an example of this in the Philippines, which I just heard from my colleague Vinod, that in Philippines, they've allowed micromobility to operate on the roads, right?
Whoa.
Because they don't have the right infrastructure, but
I see.
they recognize, sorry, was it Philippines or Indonesia? Philippines. They allowed micromobility to operate despite not having the right infrastructure because of the benefits it brings about. So you change and you adapt based on the value that it brings. To be specific, to answer your question, I think I can only speak based on the feedback and the experience that we have here in Cyberjaya. If you go to other cities, it might be a little bit different, right? It depends on based on where you want to allow micromobility, the size of the vehicle, right? For example, the body frames and the human factors in Europe and in Malaysia are very different,
Yep.
right? The average height, the average size. And so
Right.
maybe we want to specify a little bit around what types of vehicles are allowed based on your height, based on your body weight, and things like that. Speed is, of course, an important one.
Yep.
What we see across the world is 25 kilometers per hour, full stop, right? That's it. What we can do is be a bit more specific and say 25 kilometers per hour on this type of road, 15 on this type of road, 10 and then 0 on the other ones, right? The other ones that we see are around helmet requirements. So far, there are no countries around the world that require helmets. They are all recommended. I believe Australia maybe just recently required by law to wear a helmet. And so it might be a bit different there because of what they want to practice. And finally, I think the other one is licensing. No country in the world yet has required licensing by the users themselves, depending on the class of the micromobility vehicle. So if you go up to a certain speed, no license required. Once you exceed a certain speed, you at least need a driver's license. Not a micromobility license, but a car driver's license, and that is sufficient. So there are many different types of, there's no cookie cutter approach. Every city has to have its own sets of rules and regulations. And I think that's why what we've been able to do here with Cyberview and Futurise and Cyberjaya is a pilot program where we operate, gather the data, and then understand what types of regulations make sense instead of the other way around, where we regulate first and ask questions later.
Yeah. Okay. Humayun, 2 minutes, yeah, and then Taty.
So, as Tim said, at the moment it's a clean slate. There's nothing written down. So that's why I've said several times, we all can sit together and come up with something which works in the interest of the city, the ministries, and us. Infrastructure, as I said, it's already in place. We don't have to do anything. City councils don't have to do anything. In some cities, they have a bidding system where, or they limit the number of e-scooters each operator can place. Yeah, that's something which can be implemented here. Recently, Dubai regulated e-scooters. So there you need a permit. If you have a driver's license, then it's not required. But if you don't, then you just go to the RTA's website, fill in your details, and you're allowed to, you get the permit. I think same thing in Singapore recently. You go on their website of the JPJ equivalent, and you apply for it and you get it. So as it's very new in Malaysia, whatever the requirements are, we are ready to help the authorities and the vice versa.
Okay, Taty.
Thank you. I think, my answer earlier, where every city has its own issues that they're trying to solve with micromobility, also attests to how best to regulate a micromobility operator. I think it's best decided by a city level government. I think most of the other markets that BEAM operates in at a federal level, they provide guidelines very alike to the WARTA, Road Traffic Rules 2021, that the Ministry of Transport released in December of last year. And I think that already has the basic elements to best control what is micromobility. I believe the WARTA has a speed requirement, a weight requirement, the power maximum for the engines, the shape of how of a micromobility vehicle. And I think to not curb innovation, because innovation in technology design, and the form factor of a micromobility vehicle is ever changing. We started off just knowing, micromobility is just a bicycle, and now we've got 2-wheeled scooters, and OoGyaa has 3-wheeled scooters, and now we've got those segways that don't even have a handle; they just, are wheels with a foot base. So at federal level, I think it's where it currently is enough to provide controls for safety in terms of speed and weight, things like that, and also allows room for innovation, which is important for the growth of the industry in any market that
Yeah.
it's in. However, at city level, I think this is where we can be a bit more tailored with the examples that Tim and Humayun have provided. You know, a lot of cities are congested. They don't have any more space. So if the government is saying that we do not have the infrastructure, I don't think there is a likelihood in the future where the governments around the world are specifically making micromobility lanes for scooter riders or bicycle riders. I think we can adopt some examples, you know, in other more mature markets around Europe, in London, for example. The micromobility was actually introduced as part of the bill as a reaction to COVID, because it was a single person vehicle and allowed for the social distancing requirements
Okay.
while not curbing any movement
Yep.
of people around
Yeah.
the city. That was a very positive step for them. And what they did, because it was needed at the time, was just to allow e-scooters to function on not just on footpaths, but also the leftmost area of a road,
Of the road.
existing road, just demarcate such
Oh,
an
okay.
area for micromobility. And now that actually, when you know we're all in the endemic and everything is going back to normal,
Yep.
The people of London really liked that, and it's something that they are sticking to. You know, and that's just one example in London. And if I take the US of 50 states, micromobility rules at city level is adopted in 35 states, and each of the 35 states have different rules.
Yeah.
Where can they operate? What's the speed? What's the safety features? The weight, the size, it's all different. So we're looking for a cookie cutter model that Tim suggested. It's not going to exist. But I
Exist,
think
yeah.
at federal level, I think the government has already put out the necessary steps to ensure the safety without curbing innovation. And at city level, I think we should empower local governments to make their own decision on how, when to adopt micromobility. Sorry, Karam, that was more than
Yep.
2 minutes.
Yeah, but that was like the last question and answer I wanted to get from you. So we've got one question. Oh, we've got two, but I will take the gentleman at the back there because he put up his hand earlier. And I'm going to only allow one of you to answer this, so depending on what the question is. So we'll see who wants to answer it best. Okay, go ahead, young man.
Hello, thank you. So first of all, thank you for sharing us the safety technology on the micromobility vehicles with us. So my question is, how do we educate the micromobility users? Because micromobility users not only e-scooters users, also bicycles and all the other type of vehicle. So how do we educate them on how to behave on, for example, junction with traffic lights or without traffic lights or at a roundabout and all that? Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, so in other words, his question about how to control the X factor, man, it's the X factor. But I'm going to leave this to Tim to answer. Tim, can you take this question, please?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. And that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges that we face now as micromobility operators. From a technology point of view, we can control. From a hardware selection point of view, we can control. What we cannot control is the people who use our services, right? And when it comes down to education, it's just patience and resilience. And we just have to keep going back out, spreading the message, either through technology, through marketing campaigns, or on the ground. Like I mentioned earlier, the locations that we can, we try to send a team there to teach people on a daily basis. And I think it's a long road ahead, right? When cars were first invented, people were killing horses with cars, right? And it took time. It took time for people to figure out, oh, I drive on this side of the road.
Yeah.
I don't make a left turn on the right road, right? It takes time. But it has to start somewhere, and I think it could start with us as operators, making constant effort to organize events and campaigns, right, on the ground, speaking to people. And I believe that once we reach a tipping point where there's enough people who, like 51% of the people know how to use micromobility in the correct way, the other 49% will just follow. Why do you think Japan's streets are so clean? Because when you throw something on the ground, you're the only one who's throwing it on the ground and everybody can see you, right? Same with micromobility. If someone does something silly or that is illegal, as long as it's a community or a societal majority norm, that person will feel weird enough that he won't even do it anymore. And everybody will just follow the rules. So I think it's gonna take a lot of effort from the bottom and from the top.
Yeah.
Awareness and education campaigns from us, but also perhaps enforcement from the top. If we scare people, through fines and summons, that's always a good way to. It's a last resort, but it forces people to adhere to certain rules and regulations. So yeah, a two-prong approach: bottom up, top
Okay,
bottom.
good.
Yep.
All right. Look, with that now, we've already come to the end of the time allocated to us, and I want to let people to mingle and to to eat. If there is some food, I didn't. Oh yeah, there is some food there. Of course, this is Malaysia. There's always some food there, and I want you to network also and meet with the panelist members here. I just want to end by just also. I think most people know the role of Futurise, right? But Futurise really is about regulation, it's about innovation, it's about commercialization, right? The nexus of this coming together and to come up with win-win-win solutions for all parties, which is their core mantra. And you've heard about they're responsible for the national regulatory sandbox, and they do a lot of sandbox initiatives and get industry together with academics, with subject matter experts, with even NGOs also, with industry players. And that's the heartbeat of what they do, and which is why they took the interest, and they were the most concerned about this issue that they organized it. A big thank you to all of them, and to the CEO Rosihan, who was here earlier to give his opening. Oh, okay, Rosihan is still here also. So a big thank you to Futurise and the team for bringing us all together. And with that, we'll end our session. And please, all of you, network and learn from each other. Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
And sorry I couldn't take your question, but you can ask them individually, okay? Thank you.